All right, it's time. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here this Saturday morning and for this very important conversation brought to you by Nairametrics. It's our industry outlook. And usually with industry outlooks, we zero in on industries that, there's a lot of conversation around, there's a lot going on. And we know that there has been a lot of talk around food prices. No one, I reckon, would not find this conversation or would find this conversation relevant, right? Because food is an essential. If you're not going to the market, you're sending someone to the market. And of course, we're all witnessing this significant hike in food prices, right? And sometimes you go to the market and you ask, why is this happening? And you're hearing, oh, it's the dollar, it's seasonality, food shortages. And of course, if you follow this conversation down to its end, we're down to the markets, to the farms. And of course, that brings us to the theme for this industry outlook from farm to market, right? The rising cost of produce in Nigeria. Analysis of the latest consumer price index places headline inflation for the month of May at 33.95%. That's headline inflation. But, speaking specifically to food inflation, we've seen it go up to 40.6%. Definitely a cause for concern, definitely the need to have this conversation. So welcome once again to today's industry outlook. We're zeroing in on agriculture. It's taking center stage today. We have an amazing lineup of key speakers and Nairametrics has put together to break things down for us and provide us with in-depth analysis. Samuel Oyekomi is my co-host. He's here too. I'm sure you'll see him in just a moment. He will provide us a thorough introduction of all our panelists for today. I am Joanna. I'll also be moderating today's webinar. And of course, it'll be interesting to meet you. The chat box is open. If you're joining us, feel free to introduce yourself. Let us know where you are joining us from, what part of the country, what part of the world, right? Because we do have people from all over the world join us as well, what part of the world, and perhaps even what industry or what sector you operate in. It'd be nice to meet you in the chat box as well. Q&A box is also open. So as the conversation progresses, I'm sure our panelists will be doing justice. So you may have questions, so feel free to drop them in the Q&A box, and we'll be sure to get round to it, time permitting us, right? Hopefully we're able to keep the time and get round to doing justice to the question and answer segment. This conversation will be divided into 4 sessions, right? So we're going to start off, providing some sort of historical background on, food produce, the cost, the prices, where we're coming from in that regard. Then we're going to situate it with what is happening now, right? The impacts of rising farm produce cost, and then, into the future, exploring the immediate and long-term solutions, as well as leveraging international collaboration and community engagement. We know that food prices are actually going up globally, aside from what is happening here in Nigeria. So, it's interesting to have this conversation, and we're all happy to have you here. I'm going to hand over to Samuel Oyekomi now to thoroughly introduce our amazing lineup of panelists who will be walking us through today's conversation. Samuel, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joanna. And like you said, we have an amazing lineup of guest speakers today who are professionals and experts in their various fields. When it comes to agriculture, food processing, food production, importation, and exportation. So in no particular order, I will start with one of our special guests, Dr. Oke Babafemi Oladeji. And just as a brief introduction, he was born in Igbodu-Ekpe, Lagos State of Western Nigeria. He had his education at Adeola Odutola College, Ijebu-Ode, in the year 1974. He later proceeded to Ilushin Grammar School, Waterside, where he completed his secondary school education. He attended FTC College, Yaba, in Lagos. He completed his certificate course in computer science at the University of Lagos. He is the principal partner of Nigeria Spanish Agro-Allied Industry Limited, in which they process, convert cassava into pellet, starch, tapioca, and import into the Nigerian market. He was elected as the National Marketing Officer for the Southwest Zone in the year 2004, of which he is an active member of Nigeria Cassava Growers Association. In 2004, he was elected as the chairman of All Farmers Association of Nigeria, AFAN, Lagos State Chapter, still serving the second time in office till date. He was a chairman of Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He is a member of Lagos State Coconut Growers Association, member of Kolanut Farmers Association, member of West African Virus Epidemiology, WAVE Root, and Tuber Loops member of Nigeria International Food Technology, NIFT. Member of Lagos State Appeal Project in collaboration with World Bank Project in Agriculture, BAMSAS International Enterprises Limited, Femedegic Enterprises, and a host of many other associations and institutions where Dr. Babafemi Oladeji also is a part of. We also have an equally strong woman in our panel, Ndifeke Ebu, RSS. She's a registered soil scientist with the Nigerian Institute of Soil Science, Global Soil Doctor. She's the soil management agribusiness consultant and founder of Fresler Agro Consult. She holds a bachelor's in agric, soil science, MSc, soil chemistry, and mineralogy, and currently PhD in view for soil survey and land use planning. She is known for soil survey, soil testing, and soil management, fertilizer quality testing, sales of improved and hybrid seeds, agrochemicals, livestock products, and services, generating links to purchase sales of equipment, initiating free farm trial and training, general consulting, and merchandise. She is a producer of an online agro blog tagged Farm Diary to expose systems of profitable farming, both crops and livestock. Thank you, Ndifeke Ebu, for joining this session today. We also have Prince Dr. Ezekiel Olabode Adetoyi, is the CEO, Value Nutrients Ingredients Limited. He's a Harvard and Lagos Business School trained entrepreneur par excellence, and has put that into a successful career in the business world in the last 28 years of working experience in the area of public-private partnership, agribusiness, business startup, manufacturing, food processing, international trades, international mergers and acquisition, real estate, boardroom guru, agro processing and agricultural value chain development, public servant, product certification, certified animal scientist. Prince Adetoyi is self-motivated with strong managerial business development, interpersonal and proven leadership skill. He has passion for the development of youths in education and enterprise. Prince Adetoyi's business and academic excellence commenced at the University of Ilorin, Kwara State, where he earned a degree in agriculture, bachelor's in agriculture. Subsequently, he pursued his passion with determination, coming from a struggling background without allowing it to weigh him down, to pick a PhD grade in animal science in his master's degree at the University of Ibadan, Oyo State. He is also the immediate past commissioner for agriculture of the state. Thank you very much, Prince Dr. Ezekiel Olabode, for joining this session. We also have Ibrahim Megari Hamadu, the founder, CEO of Rice Africa. He's a lawyer, tech entrepreneur, World Economic Forum uplink top innovator. He's currently the founder, CEO of Rice Africa Technologies with operations in Nigeria, Tanzania, and Rwanda. Rice Africa is an award-winning tech-driven agriculture optimization platform, improving the productivity of smallholder farmers in Africa through the Farm Easy operating system. Ibrahim started his entrepreneurial journey over 2 decades ago. He has worked, co-founded, and led technology startups that develop many innovative and impactful solutions. Some of the few are Mobile Medical Sponge Analytics, the Nigerian data analytics firm that invented and developed the animal identification and management solutions in partnership with MTN, livestock247.com. Ibrahim Megari and the companies he is involved with are recipients of many awards, including the World Economic Forum Circulation Accelerators 2022, the LEAP 2023 Technology for Humanity Award in Riyadh, KSA, the Nigerian Innovation Summit, Driving Growth in Agriculture Through Technology Award 2023. He is a regular resource person at the Villas Institute in Switzerland, where he facilitates masterclasses on the transformation of agriculture in Africa. He is a mentor and business coach to many entrepreneurs in Africa. He lives and works in Lagos, Nigeria, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And I'm sure just reading through this profile of our speakers, we can tell very well of the rich background and knowledge that they have in this industry. And on this note, I'll go to Yuade Ahime for the webinar presentation on from farm to table or to market, the rising cost of farm produce in Nigeria, causes, impact, and solutions. Yuade, you have the floor.
Good morning, Samuel. Good morning, Joanna. Good morning, our distinguished panelists. My name is Yuade Ahime. I'm the head of strategy and public affairs at Nairametrics. I will be presenting today on the Nigerian agriculture space so that it will give us a background into what we're going to be talking about and how we're going to go about it. So let me just start from the beginning. From farm to market, like you said, rising cost of farm produce in Nigeria, positive value distribution. I just add to that, yes, from farm to market and market table, farmers get to sell it to the consumer. And at the end of the day, we look at that long agricultural value chain in order to ensure that we are able to ensure that the gaps that are there, we're able to mitigate against them and make it more efficient. There's so much inefficiency there too. According to the West African Agricultural Program, there is no better fertilizer than farmers to do. Let's take a brief look at the agricultural sector in Nigeria. It contributes about 25% GDP. It employs about 70% of workforce. The majority engaged in subsistence farming. What are the main produces in Nigeria? Grain, beans, rice, unicorn, fruits and vegetables, pepper, onion, other
your audio is a little, we're struggling to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Not very well. It's getting better, but it's like there's some sort of interruption. Whether yes,
can you hear me better now? Okay, that's fine. Sorry about that. Much better now. Okay, thank you, Joanna. So I was talking about livestock, herding, poultry, forestry, which is another aspect of farming. Fisheries, variety of fishes that are caught in the waters of Nigeria. Fish farms that produce variety of fishes are also contributors to the agricultural value chain. We're a net food importer, despite our significant output. There's need for improved agricultural practices. Technology has to come in. We have to cover the inefficiencies and the gaps within the agricultural value chain, from farm to market, from market to table. We have to invest in infrastructure, whether it's logistics, technology, what's it called? High duty vehicle issues, like tractors and farming trucks that we need to use. We need to have more supportive policies across the value chain, not just for farming, but from farm to table, which for me really should be the discussion that everybody should be having in Nigeria. I think there's so much focus on just, let's go to the farm, let's provide the seedlings. If we test the soils and the crops come out, the yields are high and we don't move them to the market, then there is really going to be a huge part of it that is wasted. So what are the current realities in the market? High level of insecurity, which increases the cost of farmers and even meeting the farming season and the harvesting season. If you go to the market, Joanna mentioned just now when we started that people will tell you that the prices of goods have gone up because foreign exchange has gone up. Even those that are produced locally, well, you won't blame them because part of those inputs come from some of the things that are brought in, some of the feeds that are brought into Nigeria, which cost foreign exchange and so on. Inflation has gone up. Food inflation has hit 40.66 at the end of May. Supply chain disruptions, like we said, there's direct and indirect levies that are charged in terms of moving food produce from one point, from the major food producing areas to where consumption is really high, in terms of direct levies, which you would pay for using the roads, toll gates, indirect levies due to insecurity challenges that we're facing, climate change. We've seen the disruption of the weather in Nigeria. Planting season this year has shifted a bit from usually February, March, it's gone into April, May. You're hearing, and then the floods are beginning to, the rains are beginning to get heavier as we got into June. What are the factors? So if you look at this, this is just a summary of some of those factors that we're looking at. Direct and indirect levies that we're speaking about. It increases the cost of production and transportation costs, rental costs for those who can't go to the farms because of insecurity and kidnapping and all. It invariably increases the cost of planting, the cost of harvesting, some export levies that reduces profitability, raising local prices. I've mentioned in insecurity, disruption in production and harvesting season, reduction in output because many of the farmers can't go to the farm, global factors that have been brought about from COVID. We're still struggling with the global supply chain management issue, economics, policies. Government have initiated so many policies this year, food security, food emergency, food crisis, release of food from reserves. Still, the impact is really not felt. We've spoken about climate change, we've spoken about supply chain issues, lack of transportation, lack of heavy-duty vehicles to move those things, lack of rail lines and even waterways to move quick perishables and so on. There needs to be investment in those areas and more. And so what are the impact on the farmers? Small-scale farmers are particularly hit because they faced increased cost of inputs like seeds, fertilizers, and equipment. Even to upscale using technology becomes very expensive. Financial strain on many farmers. Produce can be taken to the market, so they lose a lot of money from investment in the farming itself when you can't go from farm to market and then from market to table. Technological adoption is also an issue. The cost of adopting technology. Like I said, insecurity, power is a major challenge for storage because even if you're adopting technology for things like storage, for better farm production and harvesting, and there's no power, then of what use is it? What's the impact on the consumer when it comes to the market? We've seen subsidy removal, the economic challenges that we're having, low income in households, food inflation as high as 44.66%, labor and organized labor and the productive sector are still on how much minimum wage should be. Salaries are not moving up. Urban consumers are feeling the pain because inflation is growing higher and higher in urban areas. More people are trying to move to urban areas, also reducing the quantum of social amenities available, which also causes a strain in terms of logistics and infrastructure. Rural communities who are majorly the farmers are feeling the impact from climate change, from inability to purchase seedlings to go to the farms, from insecurity, from inability to go to the farms to farm, to produce, to harvest, kidnapping, and so much more. So what has government done over time? And like I said, this administration over the last year has put in a number of policies towards trying to provide some solution in that space. Initially, the administration before these import bans, there were some food items that were on the FX list by central bank, which has since been lifted and reversed. For instance, rice, just to stem local production and increase production. That's one. State of emergency on food security, release of reserves to help reduce market prices arising from continued inflation and perceived effects, depreciation, subsidies to farmers, initiatives like the Agricultural Transformation Agenda, Growth Enhancement Support Scheme, Anchor Borrowers Program, the Youth Empowerment in Agriculture Program, along with provisions for fertilizers, seedlings, you just name them. Despite all these efforts, there are criticisms regarding the effectiveness and reach of this policy, which highlights the need for more robust and inclusive strategies. This is my opinion and I'm sharing it. So that's why we have the array of speakers who are going to delve into the details. For I think we need to start looking at agriculture from farm to table, first farm to market, how you get it from the farm to the market, rather than just the farming aspect of it, and then farm to table. And then finally, what are the solutions we're looking at? Improve supply chain, support sustainability practices, sustainable practices, economic incentives, technology adoption, collaborative exports, supportive policies, and all stakeholders sitting down like we're doing today on the Nairametrics Industry Outlook. Thank you very much. And if you listen to us and you're listening to this, join us every Monday for Follow the Money at 7:30. I'm sorry, at 8 a.m. on Classic 97.3 FM with your host Ubudre, and every Wednesday with Everyday Money Matters on Lagos Talks 91.3 FM. Thank you very much. Over to you, Joanna.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Wade, and of course, highlighting the fact that Nairametrics is, championing thought leadership, especially when it comes to things that affect the economy on various platforms. Again, an excellent presentation, Wade Aime. I appreciate how you highlighted the in-between stages, not just what's happening on the farms, what's happening before the farms, what's happening between the farms and the markets, and of course what's happening in the market as well. So we're going to go ahead, right, with the conversation, of course, from farm to market, the rising cost of farm produce in Nigeria, the cause, the impact, and the solution. And we're diving into the first session where we hope our speakers will be providing we believe our speakers will be providing some sort of background, historical background on farm produce and the food prices. So we're going to begin with Mr. Megari. How have food prices evolved, right? And what specific policies or economic conditions do you think have driven these changes over time in the past? Are there lessons that we can learn from how past administrations approached controlling food prices and how perhaps this administration is handling the whole food price situation?
Well, thank you, Joanna, and thank you everyone for having me. Good morning once again. It is true and unfortunate that the country is experiencing a high cost of food, but this is my opinion too, just like the immediate speaker mentioned. But I think this is a manifestation of what we've gone through from 2020 to 2023. I personally prefer to do a more detailed interrogation of situation instead of just talking about the peripherals. This is a country that is fed by the hard labor of its smallholder farmers. For the sake of those joining us now that are not conversant with the happenings around agriculture, not only in Nigeria, but in sub-Saharan Africa, over 80% of the food we eat comes from smallholder farmers that are so often neglected. And let us remember that Nigeria experienced significant disruptive situations, adding to the more fundamental points that usually smallholder farmers go through. Nigeria experienced a lot of disruptive situations between 2020 and 2023. And I would like to go a little bit into that, just to refresh in our memory. If we could remember, between March to August of 2020, the unfortunate lockdown occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic. And from March to August, we were all locked down, affected food production. And like we all know, that's the beginning of supposedly the beginning of the rain-fed season to the harvest period. We also saw a higher level of increase in insecurity in 2021, and almost around all food-producing states. That's in 2021. So COVID disrupted a lot of operations in 2020. Then 2021, there was a peak in the insecurity around most food-producing states. Then in 2022, around February 2022, if you remember, that was the period when we had the beginning of the Russian-Ukraine crisis. A lot of people don't understand the connection between the Russian-Ukraine crisis and the food systems in most developing countries. The Russia-Ukraine, that's where most of our fertilizer components and what we normally blend to have our fertilizers emanate from. So the global fertilizer supply chain got disrupted. And to make matters worse, in the same 2022, the massive flood between May and October of 2022. I think that's something that a lot of us do remember. Almost 8.4 million tons of 14 crop varieties output were lost. Over 860-something thousand hectares of farmlands and agricultural structures were affected. And this is not for me. It's according to the National Agricultural Extension and Research Liaison Service at Zaria. And then the other thing, towards the end of 2022, the currency redesign, and that now it's a distant memory. A lot of us went through pains when that government decided to all of a sudden to change the designs of the currency. It affected many farmers. It, in fact, bankrupted a lot of farmers, and it disorganized the preparations for the 2023 farming season. And then in 2023, of course, the election had its own share of disruptions. And then, of course, the announcement on the first day of the regime of removal of subsidy, and like the immediate speaker mentioned, the forex policies of this administration. So whether we like it or not, this country went through many disruptions, and that's what we're paying now. And it affected food production. It affected all the things that we know that are responsible for a perfect production season, to go to market strategy, everything. In fact, the UN FAO and the World Food Program predicted that as far back as October 2022, as was reported by the BBC, that Nigeria will face high catastrophic hunger if we're not covered. So these disruptions added to the existing fundamental reasons that I'm sure we're going to talk about. Not most of the experts are here. These disruptions added to the fundamental reasons for low productivity brought us to this current situation. Unfortunately, this government is responsible for fixing. So this is where we are. And concerning the last part of your question, I think this government must increase the production of major crops like rice, maize, cassava, because these crops are central to the hunger issue. This is what most families rely on for their sustenance. Unfortunately, Nigeria has never been short of significant policies. I'm happy that we have the chairman of the Lagos chapter of the All Farmers Association and the past commissioner of Agri is also here. And they are big government people. My brother Bode was in government, and the powerful woman of soil, the soil scientist, she's also here. So we've never been short of great ideas, but the problem with us, unfortunately, is the Nigerianization, what I call the Nigerianization of those policies. That has always been our problem, and I hope and I pray that some of my colleagues on the panel will shed more light on the issue. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for that, Mr. Maigari, and so much covered there. It's just surprising how much happened within just 4 years, right? You gave us a background between 2020 till date. And as you have pointed out, we're not short of policies. It's always, you know, the implementation that some things get lost in translation. But just to widen it a little bit, right? With the current trends in food prices, how do you compare them to historical data over the past 2 decades? You provided us some context for the past 4 years, right, since 2020 COVID. But over the past 2 decades, how do the current trends in food prices compare to that? What are some patterns that you have identified? And what would you say in the past have been the most effective policies when it comes to managing food inflation? And then, you know, bringing it to now, Tinubu's handling, this administration's handling, right, of it, what have they come up with an improved strategy from what has happened in the past, Mr. Maigari?
Thank you. Well, like I said, We've never been short of great policies, but just to continue a little bit from what I started with, the Nigerianization, meaning, like you said, the implementation. I think this administration has a lot to learn from previous policies. And for instance, if you go back as far back as, for those that some of us that are old enough to remember, from the Operation Feed the Nation of the Obasanjo regime and the Green Revolution programs of the Shehu Shagari, to the most recent Uncle Borrowers program, the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative, the National Livestock Transformation Plan of the Buhari administration. All these are excellent programs that I think this current government can learn from. And I believe, to answer your question directly, what previous government, if we go back in time, have always been always done in terms of addressing food security is to ramp up production, and to increase our productivity, to increase our production per hectare. I think that is the most sensible thing to do at the moment. And I think the government started right by, in the presentation I had, the speaker reminded us of the state of emergency that was declared. Ramping up production involves a lot of factors. It involves the complete design of the policies around the ecosystem, the complete redesign of government policies in terms of palliatives. And I really like what the first speaker also mentioned. Let's not over-concentrate on just ramping up production. What about access to the market? How do we connect the farm to the market? And how do we make, which I intend to talk about, how do we make food available, accessible, and affordable? And I think that is just, to cut all the long grammar, make food available, accessible, and affordable. That's just it.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Maigari. Of course, there's a lot to build on in this conversation. And again, it's interesting how previous administrations have handled this issue of food inflation. And we will see how this administration goes ahead, to handle it. There have been several interventions, making grains available, fertilizers available, grants, and so much more. So we'll see how effective and what other policies they're able to come up with. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Maigari. Let's come to Dr. Olabode. We've seen food inflation almost double. Right now it's at 40.6%. So how does the current food inflation rates compare with the rates during previous administrations? What unique challenges does this administration face, right, different from other administrations when it comes to combating this food inflation? And not to overload you with questions, but what role as well has the global conditions? We've had Dr. Maigari allude to COVID and Russia, Ukraine, but if you can give more context to that, the global economic conditions and domestic policy, how have they combined to play out in influencing Nigeria's food inflation over the last decade? Dr. Olabode.
Thank you, Mustafa. And I want to thank my previous speaker. Good morning, House, and to listener. Once again, Mr. Ibrahim Maigari has done justice to all this question. However, as a farmer myself and an administrator, all these things that are happening today, we don't need any soothsayer to tell us that we are going to get to where we are today. I saw it coming in the last 5 years. First was all the menaces we have in Nigeria, Boko Haram, banditry, and co. If all of us first, let's say, we are watching, things like that was restricted to some maybe Northeast. Later, the thing was expanding. So the day they started bombing Abuja. From there, they moved to Kogi State. From there to Owo. From there to Ekiti. Then to the south, to the east. I knew that there will be serious problem. No matter the statistics we are quoting today, all the statistics, I don't want to be bothering us again. Food has risen to 61%. You see all from that the inflation, the food inflation, which we now have at 40.6 headline inflation again. All these are not by magic. First, we knew that insecurity constituted this problem. Just like a children play, they will say, like play, play. We got to where we are today. This is my 28 years as a practitioner in agric, both in public and in private. I'm still a practical farmer. So I know where shoe pinches. I belong to several associations, rice or cassava or livestock and co. So I could say vividly that, look, all the figures they are quoting are very right. But I will even say this figure of a rise in food cost of 61%, maybe possibly more than that now. Because if I planted a cassava, for example, my entire 1 hectare cassava before will be like a 400,000 for me to make 1 ton of a cassava. Now, how will food will not be expensive and scarce? Number one, land clearing alone. The northern part is okay. Even in the northern part, land clearing for 1 hectare there cannot be less than 300 to 400,000. You will agree with me now that if you are opening up a land in the east or especially southwest, you will spend nothing less than 1.5 million. Then if you put that to cost of a cassava stem, to cost of fertilizer, labor, and everything. So I'm not surprised now that even in the southwest, cassava is 150,000 per ton. And you will need like multiply by 4 of that for you to get 1 ton of a gari. So if you now see the cost of what they are selling gari in the market now, you know that it's not a rocket science. At times, with apology to this consumer protection and co, whenever they go to the market and be accusing them, they increase the price. I would say, hey, come on, you need to put all this figure together. That is the cause of the rise in prices of food. Then our attitude, generally, I was very young in the 80s when they started, or 70s, Operation Feed the Nation, from Obasanjo to different, back to Operation Back to Land, OFN, and all the good idea federal government, state has put on ground. I will say this is very good, but the attitude, the right attitude to those policy, and it is high time that we face the reality. A friend told me yesterday, he said, God forbid battle. He said, we still see dollar to import. He said, we must produce and we must be serious about it. We must not pay lip service. So in the last 5 years, you see it, agriculture is deteriorating every day, it's deteriorating every day. Even the oil that we rely on, is it really selling? The oil, what is the oil? From 2.2 million barrel per day, we are doing maybe average of 1.2 now. So these are the bane of problem. And unless we tackle it, food wage bill will continue to increase. And when we are talking about it, I just say, oh, minimum wage, either 62 or anything. If a rice is still 95,000 naira per 50 kg, what happened? So that is the way I see it. World Bank come up with a series of reports on Nigeria food crisis. And I'll say, look, policies are there. Implementation is the problem. And it is high time. And it's done on us now that we must find a way out.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Olabode. Of course, we must find a way out. You said that you saw this coming, ahead, even before it's happened. There were so many indicators. What do you think could have been done then not to cry over spilt milk, but what do you think could have been done then to have prevented us from getting to where we are now? Or do you think it was inevitable?
Yes. What I saw when I see it coming, apart from the Ukraine, Russia something, is our attitude, general attitude, and government inclusive. What I believe we should be doing then, we have more than 35 million hectares of arable crops in Nigeria. We have 36 states plus Abuja. We have 774 local governments. And I used to say it, if we can pick at least 2 crops where each local government or state has core competence, handle it the way Malaysia handle oil palm. After all, in 1982, we are the one that gave them oil palm sickness. If we can start that, then it could have been better, but it's never still too late. They say 20 years ago, you could have planted a tree, but the best time is still right now. So I saw it coming when we are paying lip service to agriculture. Apology to say, even at both federal and state level, I'm still not too comfortable with the budget given to agriculture. The way the budget for security in Nigeria, that is the way agriculture should be taken, because for all these people that are involved in banditry, kidnapping, and co, what would they use the
So we appear to have lost your audio. Okay.
So what I think now that we should do now, with farms, at least each of the local government should open up 2,000 hectares. I can speak for some southwest state. For example, in the old western region, it's only run by cocoa and oil palm. Maybe towards Midwest, then rubber. In the east, oil palm. In the north, we have ginger. We have a groundnut. We should go back to those olden days now. Start from a local government to the state. For example, each of the southwest states are very good in cocoa, in oil palm, and some part cashew. We should start doing it now, and we should encourage youth. We should mobilize finance for you. We should open up land for the youth. There's no youth that will have 1.5 million to open up 1 hectare of land. Governments will invest in land clearing. Governments will bring in more tractors and open up. Then put the youth there, give them some stipend, buy from them. Then we can put all this produce in a strategic grain reserve and every other one. And of course, too, we should spend more on processing, because post-harvest losses in Nigeria is still more than 45%. Imagine you produce and you lost almost half of the produce. So we need to do value addition. Thank you.
But thank you so much for that, Dr. Olabode. Of course, we'll still come round to the solutions. I'm coming down to Otumba Oladeji, Dr. Oke. So, you know, we have the security situation that, you know, previous speakers have addressed, right? How would you say the security situation in Nigeria's farming regions has changed? And with these changes, what have been the impact? What impact does this have on, you know, the current farm produce cost? How do you think that these challenges are being addressed differently now from the way they were previously? Otumba. I'm not sure you're speaking. I can't hear you.
Yeah, let me.
Okay. We can see you, but we can't hear you. So your mic may be muted.
Yeah. Let me first appreciate my last speaker and Dr. Maigari for to have spoken very well on the food insecurity. I believe that's they have spoken well there, and they have given us more insight about what is happening to the inflation we have in Nigeria today. The security systems of our country is it's not something to write home about now, and it has causes the high cost of food inflation, no doubt about that. And we have seen this from the past government of which we had banditries, herders, farmers, conflict, all these things. And I'm to talk like a practical farmer, because these too much grammar of which we've been talking for years is nothing to even talk about now. Let us identify, let us sit down on the round table. How do we solve it? Where are we going? We saw the banditry, it was from the northern side of the government the other time, before it's now moving around the southwest and other regions. And there's no way it's not going to affect us. Let governments bring much impact on security, even at the local government level. Let there be boards to be inaugurated. Let the farmers be involved. They shouldn't just call some military people and say they should. Let there be a board. Bring them in. Like my own association, All Farmers Association, is the umbrella body of all the associations. And we are having over 80 to 90 commodities association. And every commodity has its own problem. Is it tomato? Is it on the livestock? Let's the umbrella body be part of the security system of which we are talking in Nigeria. And we should be able to identify what is really happening in the system so that we could reduce the inflation of food. See what we are seeing in the market. An average household now cannot even hit 3 square meals. It's nothing to write home about. So as a practical farmer, the security system is very, very paramount. And our governors should come on board. They've just held a meeting in Southwest, which it was being held in my state at the Lagos State. But we still need to think and bring in the security systems there. My last speaker talked about the local government to have impact. Very many of us, by the time we even plant, we will see some more of these other people going there going there with their cattle to even hit it. But if government is able to identify a cluster areas where every farmers can easily go there to have access to what they are planting, what they are processing, no any other person will be able to move in there to obstruct and to not for us to have food on the tables of every Nigerian. So we are talking about security now. The security systems of which we lag behind has given us the inflation of which we are now experiencing. So we have to talk more of that, and let there be local vigilante to be introduced. Let us give them more power. Yeah. There's nobody doesn't come from a village. Every one of us come from a community, and we know the terrain of our own area. Then why can't we engage those local vigilante to be paid or to have them? There's nothing coming from heaven, from elsewhere, if insider is not there. So the security system of which we are talking of is very paramount, or else we will still be facing reality. The government of which we have today, their inceptions we were able to talk at in MENA that time, and we were able to do some blueprints to them that local vigilante should be introduced, and this will really help we farmers, because most of us are very, very afraid to go to our farm, seeing people with AK-40, seeing people. Then how will you go and harvest, or how will you do more plantation? So let there be a improve in these security systems of which I'm talking about. Let the governors make it as a point of duty that there should be an area like 50 hectares to be a cluster place where farmers who have their processing of their produce, where they could have the storage there, the environment there to be conducive. Definitely, we attain some kind of food coming out there. We still sustain. Smallholder farmers host most of what we are having in Nigeria today. So let's rest my case there.
Thank you so much, Otumba, Dr. Oke Babafemi Oladeji. He is the chairman of the All Farmers Association of Nigeria. And I mean, you alluded to the meeting that Southwest governors had earlier this week, right? And speaking to what you mentioned about security, they also agreed to strengthen farm security by creating a specialized unit within the Amoteku Corps. So we'll be following, and I'm sure you'll be following that development and fill us in on how effective that will be. But let's move from security now to climate change, right? What specific impacts has climate change had on Nigeria's agriculture, and what measures do you think can be taken to mitigate the impact of climate change? We know that climate change has gotten, progressively worse, right? The weather conditions are becoming more and more extreme. But how has, the issue of climate change been dealt with in the past, historically, and what impact is it having on Nigeria now?
Yes, the climate change of which we have now is not favorable, like what we are seeing recently. And I believe government has more to do in this sector. There are some organizations that are these weather forecasts, NIMET, and they should be well equipped to keep us informed. Because if they are being equipped and we were aware of what's to be done, farmer will not have wastages. We know when where we planted or where we should not, so that erosion doesn't take us all our produce. And we will take the necessary measure of what this season will look like. So the climate change is really affecting, but we want government to strengthen their office. NIMET, precisely, which they do the water forecast. We believe if they should be well recognized and be more equipped, they should keep the farmers involved. We are in the area of which we saw some years back, like in the East, ecological problem was a paramount thing of which we don't even pray to even have it. But we can't do without it. When the flood comes in and it's wipe all what we have planted, most of us borrow money from the farm, and we have invested over 100,000 or 200 into the farm, and water the rainfalls, and the whole thing wipes off. Definitely, it's going to really affect us. So the agency, the federal government, the state government should take cognizance of them. They should be well equipped to give us upfront information. And even some years back, we were even told, oh, we should not burn our farms. We should not burn all the bushes. It can cause anything. How many of those people are we now seeing in the farm advising us? We don't see them again. By the time we were able to cultivate our land in the Southwest, we put fire. And by the time the fires goes on there, we now do our plantation. If all these things are wrong, let us see how we could be sensitized, how government could send some all these training experts to go to the farm. And they should link up with the umbrella body. Umbrella body of every association is very, very paramount. They can easily identify to you, not wrong people, as they were doing to us in the area of agriculture, and it's even really affecting us. Someone will just come somewhere and started today without no experience. We not recognize him as a farmer. How would you not fail? Every job has its own expert. And if you're an expert like Dr. Bode said, he has been 28 years, just like myself too. I left university, and ever since I've been a strong stakeholder. So what will you do that will not be okay? So let us bring the right person into some of these boards, bring them together, let them be on the round table to tell you the right thing to be done. So governments needed that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Otumba. So, I mean, government agencies need to be more proactive when it comes to sensitization around climate change. NIMET, and I also believe the National Orientation Agencies. Hopefully, we'll see them be more proactive in that regard. Let's come to Mrs. Ebu. Should I be ladies first? But thank you for your patience. Another issue is the issue of transportation rights. How would you say transport costs for farm produce has evolved? What are some of the historical reasons behind some of these changes? I'm sure we're going to talk about the subsidy matter here. And how can improvement in infrastructure and logistics perhaps also help to reduce these costs, Mrs. Ebon?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, the moderator, Joan Mustafa. You're doing a very great job. I want to appreciate my co-speakers. I have cited Dr. Odetoji. You did a great job. Mr. Ibrahim Magari, I really enjoyed what you highlighted. And Dr. Tugba, you have really spelled out the things to be done. You know, we are so used to lip services for agriculture. Agriculture has never been a lip thing. Agriculture has never been something we keep talking about and not implementing. That is why we are where we are today. Because some of the things that are highlighted here, if they were taken into cognizance from 3, 4, 5 years, I don't think where we are today with the food crisis that we will be. But alas, we will keep making these advocacies, pending when major implementations will be put in place. But you see, for the transportation, it has really evolved because before now, farmers used to check, you know, they used to do their boats, use animal there. And then their distances were not that much because each region had what they produce that could go around within their region. But in today, where some regions are not producing, you now see that food will be coming from the north down south. And that is a whole lot of work put in transportation. And recently now, looking at the cost of fuel, to transport a certain chunk of food, say from Jigawa down to the south, it's a whole lot of money. Is it the risk? The distance covered? The farmers' crops within that period, something can get done, something can happen. Plus the insecurities we face. There are a lot of clients that have had complaints that their trucks will seize. And some of them till today, they can't recover them. So this is a major trouble for us in the agricultural sector. By and large, I keep telling everybody that you can need every other profession, maybe once in a while. But you see food will always be needed. Like right now, there are people who can't feed. And that's a very big challenge. And that will also pose another phase of insecurity because a hungry man will definitely look for what to steal. So you can imagine as a farmer, you have planted, you've done all of your stuff, and then pending when to harvest, you get to your farm and they are all uprooted. So it's a major problem. All of this is interwoven. They don't act in isolation. The insecurity, the transportation, the infrastructures, the produce, what quantity is being sent down? What quantity, what amount? So transportation has evolved to using all manner of means of transportation that most of them are very risky. And you see that farm produce gets lost in transit. Unlike when, okay, say I'm from South, I'm from Akwa Ibom, and then we have what we produce in Akwa Ibom that can cater for the South. The transportation risk will be reduced as compared to me sending agri-produce to far southwest, sometimes not. I will need to use buses, all manner of transportation means, and that will increase certainly the cost of production. Because say, for instance, from Akwa Ibom to Lagos is like 12 hours. The cost of fuel, cost of resources put in place to arrive there. So it's a major concern. Transport and logistics is a major concern in agriculture, because if what is produced is not moved to the final consumers, we will have more than what we are having presently during harvest losses.
Yeah, thank you so much for that breakdown, right? Highlighting the fact that the importance of transportation, right, and the consequences if we don't address that post-harvest harvest losses. And I think I found most interesting, what you said in the beginning about initially how each region was producing, right? They had something they were producing, so they were not 100% reliant on a particular region. To bring them food, and that transport element wasn't so much of an issue. But now, it's a different story. So thank you for that historical background, right? Now let's come to, before we come to the second session, the role the Naira has played. Right now, you're going to the markets, and there's some things that I just can't. There was someone who was selling RAM saying that they are expensive because of dollar, and I tried to reason that out. But we know that the value of the Naira has affected quite a number of the prices of food, right? So how, from where you're standing and your expertise, right? How has the value of the Naira of the Nigerian Naira fluctuated over the years, and what impact would you say that this has had on the cost of agriculture inputs, farm produce prices, and what measures do you think can be taken to stabilize the currency, the million-dollar question, and reduce its impact on food prices?
All right, on the issue of value of Naira, we are part of the problem here. Because you see, you are a Nigerian, and then you want to do business, and then you're making transactions with dollars or other foreign currencies. Over time, you would say to devalue the Naira. Now, the effect of that already is that, note, we don't even have what we are producing here. We are bringing in everything. Everything comes from outside. And then there's no way you now start looking for these currencies to go purchasing those items and bringing it down. Now, it will not have effect. Now, right now, inputs, seeds, 80% of the seeds farmers grow these days are the hybrids. And therefore, they're being imported. So how much will a farmer have to start purchasing a pack of seed? Right now, like a pack of tomato seed goes for nothing less than 35,000. How many seeds are inside? At times 300. Pepper, a tin of pepper right now, seeds, is about 63,000 naira. Now, how many of that amount can a smallholder farmer afford? So that's the impact the value of Naira has cost. How do we get across to chemicals that are used? Then importing all of this is a challenge, because if our research institutes, I think that's one of the solutions right now here, our research institutes should look into ways of improving our own indigenous seeds such that they are peculiar to our own advances, environmentally and otherwise. Like right now in cassava, we have improved varieties of cassava that are doing well within the tropics. Before now, cassava used to take a whole lot of time, a year plus, but now the Roots Crop Research Institute, they have come up with varieties that can do well within 6 months. So the research institute will equally look into how to, work on most of our indigenous seeds that can be used more than one planting season. And the saddest part is the hybrids we are importing have only one generation. You cannot replant them. And even when you try to replant them, they will grow, but they will not make yield. So you see that it is a big risk, it's a big tax for the farmers to keep buying seeds year in, year out, whereas our local indigenous seeds can be recycled and they'll still give yield. So the Research Institute now has a whole lot of work on their shoulders. The seeds, potato seed has been also improved. That's why we now have orange flesh
potato, we now have the purple flesh. That's the function, that's the work of the research. That's what research has been able to do. Now, on the other vegetable part of the crop, that is much now. You see, how much is this pepper now? Pepper is 4 for 200 naira. But our additional seeds, it is improved upon for adaptability to pests and then climate, and then reduce their duration of growth where they can mature early. Then it will be better for us because a farmer can also recycle his or her seeds for 3-4 years before going for a new one. But constant buying of these inputs with the rising cost of the dollar exchange rate, it's not helping the farmers. At the end of the day, they don't make profits because by the time they look at their cost of production within one cycle and then checks the profits, the margin is very low. And some of them will abandon the business. So we need to get to a point that this thing should be favorable. Yes, we've been talking about all of this over time. It is time government sit up at all levels. Like my co-speaker spoke, Dr. Odetoyi, all levels, 774 local governments. If each local government produces a crop that is peculiar, that they can manage environmentally around them, you see that there will be robust food. And by so doing, it will increase their GDP. We will not be where we'll be struggling to buy a cup of Harry for 250. How? Where? So these are the impacts, these things. It's all interwoven. There is not happening in isolation. So that someone will say, okay, let me stop importation let me stop people bringing in this, stop people bringing. Have we had enough to go around? First of all, do we have enough to go around? Now look at someone buying a bag of rice at 95,000. How many families can afford that? Now a seed, a pack of Faro 44 now has increased. How many farmers can afford? So that's the challenge we are facing with the Naira devaluation.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Ebu, for that, and that's quite succinct here, talking about.
Before you continue, I want to make a very quick correction there. I'm a miss, not Mrs. yet.
Oh, sorry, Miss Ebu. Sorry for that correction taken. All right. We'll move to the next segment of the webinar, which is analyzing the impacts of rising farm produce cost. And I would want to come to Dr. Adetoye Ezekiel here. So we've had a number of projections when it comes to food insecurity, food inflation, in Nigeria. The World Bank would come up with one. The FAO of the UN would also make projections around food inflation in Nigeria. But I wanted to get your take. What are the latest projections that you've seen from international bodies regarding Nigeria's food inflation and agricultural productivity? And more importantly, what do you see as the discrepancy between some of these projections and what we are actually seeing in Nigeria? Because, for example, I was looking at the budget 2024 Nigerian budget document for some days ago, and I saw the projections for Nigeria's inflation at 21%, around there. And right now we are dealing with a headline inflation of 33.95. So that's a huge discrepancy. So I want to get your take on what do you see as the variance between what international bodies are projecting for Nigeria's food inflation and what we are currently seeing right now, Dr. Adetoye.
Thank you, Mr. Samuel. And once again, Ms. Ebu, you did a very nice job, and of course, Otumba too. So when international organization, when they are projecting for Nigeria, at times they are very right, and at times they may not be right, because I'm a far away corner in Ekiti or in Ilesha. We need to look at it, even though the World Bank, they projected that Nigeria GDP will grow by 3.3% in 2023, 3.5% in 2025. You know, in all this projection, either the head inflation rate or the food inflation rate. I believe, inside there should be able to say, look, we want to keep down the headline inflation by 20% and food inflation, maybe from that 40% to as low as, we can say, 18%. What do we need to do? Are the basic things that we need to put in place. And in all this rise in the prices of food is as a result of the volume of our production is dwindling every day. I can't imagine how much they are selling tomato now and even pepper. Even ordinary bunch of plantain at 8,000. Even where we are producing in Osun, in Ondo, in Ekiti, a bunch should not be more than 500 naira before 1,000 naira. Even 3 pieces of plantain now is 1,005. So with all this projection, I believe Nigeria should set a standard. Let them, I know that the Federal Minister of Agric or State Minister of Agric in different states, they are doing their bit, but we need a quick fix. Thank God our president has declared state of emergency on agriculture. And I want to see state of emergency on food. We need to put numbers. For example, in livestock, consumption of maize alone is more than 10 million metric tons. That is almost 60% of what we are, or what they will consume. Then 25% of the maize will go to the food and beverages, while others are being consuming. We produce nothing less than 8 million metric tons of feed. And I look at it, when I started livestock, you see a bag of feed at as low as 800 naira. I bought a bag of feed yesterday at 14,000 naira. 200 birds will still eat 25 kg of feed. And that is why now I look at it that, is it not the same egg we are selling at 100 naira that we are now selling at 4,500? The same thing happened to Gary. So what we need to do in order to be able to streamline, because the advice given by the FAO or World Bank is as a result of what they are seeing us doing now. And that's why I say, having declared state of emergency on food, then per every state, per every local government, and the federal government, what we need to do, we can now say, okay, the northern part, they're very good for soya and maize. So if our consumption, we needed nothing less than 15 to 80 million metric tons, we can say we want to produce 20 million metric tons of maize. Rice, we can say we want to produce 10 million metric tons of rice. Soya, we can say we want to produce 8 million metric tons of soya. The same thing with some commodity. For example, the current price of cocoa in the commodity exchange is 12,570 naira. And Nigeria is producing around 250,000. One state in Nigeria, let's say Ekiti or Ondo or Osun or Cross River, should be able to produce that 250,000 metric tons. Imagine Nigeria is producing 3 to 5 million metric tons of cocoa annually, multiplied by 12,500 naira per kg. You will see that the projection the FAO or the World Bank are doing for us will change. The same thing with cashew. We planted a lot of cashew in the south, in the Midwest, in the mid Nigeria. All those Kogi and Co to Nasarawa to Anko, they are very good for Kwara State or your state, very good for cashew. Imagine we are processing it. Go to supermarket now, a small bottle of a cashew, 5,000 naira. How much does it cost us to plant a cashew? There are hybrid cashew now that will be ready in 1 year, 7 months, as against the 5 years before. That is why it pains me at times when we are saying, let us bring in a genetically modified organism, GMO seed. We don't need it. What is the work of Nigeria Cereal Research Institute at Patigi? What is the work of Cocoa Research Institute? What is the work of Nigeria Horticultural Research Institute? What is the work of Nigeria Institute for Oil Palm Research? We have research institute that can stand up, which a government or state who finance to come up with something that is good for us, for our soil and everything. Like I repeated it again, that of Malaysia. I've been to Kuala Lumpur. From before you landed at their airport, every of their space is covered with oil palm. The way we are moving petrol in Lagos, Abuja, and Co, that's the way they move palm oil. A time has come now for the projection that I see in Nigeria is, let somebody put a number down and say, we don't want our inflation rate headline to be more than 20%, and food inflation at 15%, and work towards it. And the magic to it now is the use of our youth. They are technologically savvy. We can use technology to improve yield and agriculture. And thanks to Ms. Ebu, is a soil scientist, we can improve on our soil. Where are the agri extension of those days? Where are the school? In every secondary school, that time, primary school, we go to farm. They are not plot for us. Where are they? Even in some school now, they are not even doing agriculture. This is not compulsory. If English is compulsory to speak a grammar, agriculture has to be compulsory to eat a food that is very cheap. We cannot continue to make English very important or French very important without agriculture. So that is what I see to it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor. And what I see from what you have said is that the government should adopt inflation targeting, both for headline inflation and then for food inflation, and of course, leverage on the youth, technology. And I like the fact that you made mention of the technology part, which more or less pushes me to the next thing I would like to ask you. It's almost impossible for you to take away socioeconomic vices or issues away from the likes of poverty, as you put it. So in your own opinion, what unique socioeconomic consequences now have been risen in Nigeria as a result of high food prices in the country?
Okay, thank you once again. The population of our youth is more than 60% of the entire population. We should get the youth to be very, very productive. They have technical savvy when it comes to technology. So we should engage them on the use of technology, even soil, even planting, even coming up with improved hybrid seed that we could replant. Mr. Ebu just mentioned it. Most of these GMO, you cannot replant. If you replant them, you are wasting your time. So let's put this youth into it. You want to spray now. Do you have to go and get 30 people to come and spray when 2 people can spray just the use of a drone? You can use it. So a lot of even in harvesting, why will you go and be using knife to be cutting rice when we have combined harvester that we do it? So I believe in modern day agriculture now, involve the youth, mobilize them, provide finance for them. You don't need to give that money they will use. Clear land for them. Let federal government has a special program for land clearing and work with the governor, or the governor work with the federal government or federal ministry of agri to come up from the local government everywhere, because they own the land. At times, whenever I'm driving from Lagos to my state in Ekiti, I used to shoot my head and say, what is going on, left and right. So if we are able to clear left and right, insecurity will not be there. Because when there is no place, if you go to foreign country, fly when you want to enter USA or Canada, you will see wheat, you will see maize, you will see sunflower everywhere from their airspace. I want to see it happening in Nigeria. And you see that food will be surplus, banditry will go, because there will be food, there will be work for people. And as for the youth too, all those menace will go of Yahoo and everything. Because when you say youth in agriculture, you have to equip them for them to be able to do it. And of course, give them stipend till when the harvest will come. We have a cassava now, 8 to 11 months, it will mature. Even cocoa, under 2.5, 3 years, it will mature. Oil palm, the same thing. Then pepper and tomato, and these are even the funniest thing that spend less than 3 months for it to mature. And of course, on the livestock side, on the cattle, look at it, Lagos alone is consuming nothing less than 13,000 cow per day, at average of 600,000 now per cow, multiplied by 10 to 12,000 cow. So we will begin to teach people a little ranching, even how to plant all these grasses that our herders are looking for here and there. So I believe with that, it will solve the social menace that we are having, and of course, provide the job for the people. If they give me a visa now to Japan, I will not go anywhere. Nigeria is better, and I will continue to Japan inside my farm and produce. But I need more resources at a cheaper price to be able to produce. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, please, Dr. Adetoye, and I hear you that you are not going to Japan even if you are given the visa to leave. But one thing I picked there, and I like the fact that some of the policies and reforms that you're suggesting are quite granular. They look very simple, but are quite very detailed. One of them I picked is the adequate utilization of our lands, rather than having different bushes that are used as hardouts for insecurity, those who perpetrate insecurities. And as well use that to the advantage of the agricultural sector. I'll move to Otumba Babafemi now. Earlier, you spoke about how you were part of a meeting in Lagos and the Southwest governors talking about the agricultural sector and food insecurity. And I know many of the things that Nigerians would be interested to understand is what are some of the reforms that this current Tinubu's administration have implemented in terms of fighting rising food prices or rising cost of farm produce. I would like you to help us shed a little bit of light on it as brief as you can, and then try to make some form of comparison with previous administrations, because of course food inflation at over 40% is the highest that we've seen in over 2 decades. And one will want to understand how do some of these reforms or policies, how do they compare with previous administrations, and are we really on the right track, Otumba?
Yeah, thank you, my moderator. Firstly, to compare the past government with the present one is very, very necessary. Farmers felt most of the policy being implemented during the last administrations was just a ruse. It's not, we are not aligned with. Especially when we talk about the Aquapora program. The CBNs has nothing to do with the commodities coming down on board without federal minister of agri and farmers themselves. It's nothing. What did we get out of all those policies there? Zero. Didn't get anything. Look at the rice pyramid they said they did without involving federal minister of agri. How could a government in a country decided to have a pyramid rice and the federal minister of agri was not being on the program? So we didn't, farmers as a body, of which I am one of the stakeholders in all Farmers Association of Nigeria, being one of the stakeholders, we are not being too happy with the last past administration policies. But exemptions of these ones that are held in Mina. We are trying to see the results. Recently, Niger State hosted the farmers, which our president, Tinubu, was there. And they decided to start having 20,000 tractors to be bringing in now. So it's not to be compared about. We are very happy about that. And we'll be seeing the results that this present government is doing a lot. Look at the ratio of the budget, the federal budget. For the past administrations, how much percentage has it given us? It has never risen up to 3.5% from the federal allocation. But we are still the AFAN as a body. We are the advocacy to the farmers and to our people, so that we could provide food on the tables of every Nigerian. We are talking to the government, and we are now making comparison. We are the one that could tell them that this is what people want. And we are very glad that this government is listening to what we farmers are now saying. Because like I said earlier, enough is enough for all these grammars. Let us go practical. What is it that is on ground? What are we going to change? Let us do it right now, not the other day. Not too long ago, the Federal Minister of Agriculture under our minister appointed every farmer in the state to work closely with the government. The governors in the whole state. Letter was written to us to present to our governors, and I'm sure they must have copied them, to work closely on this food security in Nigeria. How many governors are now implementing these letters right from the Honorable Minister for Agriculture? Which is there? Because we are the one that knows the problems of our people. But most of our governors, most of the people in the states or in the local government, we just call their people without getting results. So the administration of which we have now is a listening administration. But we still need to talk to our people in the government, because we are an NGO, we are farmers. We are not happy of what is happening. Look at the high cost of commodities. It's really affecting us too. Are we not going to farm? Are we not going to the market? We don't produce all what we eat. So we go to the market too, to even purchase other commodities too. So we are telling the government the right thing to do. And what are the things to be done? Provide land, like to what my last speaker have said. If there is a land that is being cleared, NARDA is now working. Ever since they've gone to sleep, we've not heard of them. They are the one that is in charge of land clearing, Nigerian agricultural land clearing. I've been seeing them now, providing us the seeds, which they brought. Even some of the seeds they even brought recently was not even good. We saw some maize that that's already, we didn't know how many years they were there. So the board there, the MD there, they should wake from sleep. They should work closely with the farmers to help people, not even the government, because we are the one to eat. Look at every household now is now crying. We are crying seriously on the rise of the inflation of which we are now facing. So, like I've said earlier, it's still some of these agencies that governments are put the right holes in the right peg there, so that those that we work, we really implement what the government required, and so that the populace will have the effect. We'll be very happy of what is on ground. So comparison is very, very okay. We've done much. We have seen most of the policies, grants homemade on the small scale that this government is now giving out. It's really working on the small holder, because we, the small holder farmers, are the one providing food in Nigeria, not the big farmers too. So the policy is incomparable. This government is still doing a lot, but we still need to tell them to do more. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. A lot still remains to be done, but I mean, you've said that this administration is doing, a lot, or a number of things. Let's quickly move to the third session, right? And we'll be exploring the immediate and long-term solutions. Funny enough, in previous sessions, we've had our speakers speak to some of the solutions even our last speaker. And I'm going to come to Miss, I beg your pardon, Miss Ebu now. What's your assessment of how effective some of the subsidies and financial incentives, that, this administration and past administrations have, made? How effective have they been in reducing the cost burden, on farmers and consumers? We know that this administration is also coming up with several, or has come up with several interventions, distribution of grain. Ogun State has a 5 billion investment plan, and, so many others. There was the Minister of Agriculture who also revealed that the government would be supporting 500,000 farmers to cultivate and produce 1 million metric tons of rice. Of course, what's your assessment of their interventions historically and at present? And then how do you think, what immediate actions do you think can be taken to stabilize food prices and also strengthen our agriculture sector and support farmers as well?
Okay, thank you very much. You see,
Miss Ebu.
like everybody, okay. Oh, sorry. I'm audible, right?
Yes, you can hear you.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Like we said, we can only do this when the right things are done and the right people who are willing to work are there. Before now, farmers were supported. There is no country where they have food sufficiency that their farmers aren't supported, either via subsidy or shared partnership. Like the last speaker said, land clearing done by NALDA. There is a counterpart funding that comes from the government. By that, it eases the expenditure, the expenses on the side of the farmer. Before now, farmers were given seeds. I think it's yesterday or day before yesterday, I read on LinkedIn on a kitty government giving out, they have strategized giving out the second phase of their agro input to their farmers at a subsidized rate. Now, a liter of a certain weed removal, I've forgotten the brand name, goes for 7,000 naira. So take, for instance, the state government is now giving such offer to their farmers at 3,000. You now see that it will go a long way to help them. What about the soft loan? They talked about the anchor borrower some years ago. That thing didn't work down here. That was something that was strategically designed to help farmers recoup. By the time you have planted 2 hectares, you have someone who comes to offtake, pay you off. You take out your profits, and then they put back the capital. Constant doing that in 3-4 years, such a farmer will do better. But you said that those projects, those policies, most of them don't see the light of the day. Some of the farmers before now had cooperatives. If the government can deal with farmers individually, they form them into a cluster. They used to have cooperatives, farmers cooperatives. Then we used to have something like farmer scheme. At different regions, at different local governments and states that are into a certain production of a certain crop. And then their either grants or loan were sent through their cooperative. And you said that this cooperative, they will grow more than 10 hectares of their crops. And by the time they sell, in agriculture, you don't grow 1/2 hectare and want to make millions from it, because already the cost of production of that 1/2 hectare will exceed it. So the bigger you plant, the better for you to make your profits. As compared to now, we don't find those things applicable in most states. I commend some states that have started. Niger State is one of them, because I have a colleague of soil science that is doing a lot of job for them in terms of their management of soil fertility in some part of the state. They are trying Ekiti. I can give it to the west to some extent, but down some of where we come from, some of us, we are not really doing well. But we are still advocating that they should do more. Because if they don't support the farmers, there is no farmer today that can afford land. Now, land issue is a problem. Fragmentation of land holdings is a major problem.
That alone inhibits mechanization. So they should look for a way to review land ownership, land tenure system. It's a problem. You go to families that they have fragmented their lands. Who can afford lands now? A plot of land now goes for 1 million or 2 million, sometimes 10 million. A plot that is barely not up to 1,000 square meter. So you see that there is so much hindrance to even pushing this agriculture move forward. That is why we keep telling the government, assign locations in every local government. If a local government can afford 40 hectares at a space to grow a crop, it will go a long way. And then talking about stabilizing the prices, we should fix prices on our agricultural produces.
Oh,
yes, because take for instance, cashew, cocoa, they are taken out of the country. They are taken out of the country, and then at a cheaper price, they'll go back, add value to them, and bring it back to sell to us at a very high cost. We should have prices. We should regulate our prices. That's why right now, the cost of items in the market is different. You can see two people selling the same thing, but at different prices, and according to how they feel like, how it's down on them to sell. There is no regulation. There should be price regulation on agricultural produces. Why so we stabilize this price over time. And then you talk about balancing consumer and farmer interests. The customers who are coming to get these things also, what is their pay? Can they afford it? The inflation is hitting everybody because right now, the demand is very high. The demand for a particular agro produce is higher than the supply. And remember, our economic law, that the higher the demand, the lower the supply, there will be a hike in the price. But when the demand or the supply equates demand, the price will be at equilibrium. So we should get to a point whereby we are able to supply so that whatever the demand is, automatically the price will crash. But when the demand is higher right now, the demand for foodstuff is very high.
Yeah. Okay, it appears you've frozen there, but I mean, you've said quite a lot
The
has
supply
been
is
said.
limited.
Okay.
So I can choose to sell what I have at the very.
All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Ebu. I'm not quite sure. I believe it's network from your end, but I mean, you said quite a lot there, right? Boosting supply, price regulation.
And then we should have intervention at some point of their group.
Okay. Perhaps the admin can work on perhaps muting because of the interruption. But you know, the president sometime in February said that he was not going to set up a price control board. So maybe we'll, I don't know, perhaps as you have recommended, we might see a shift on that point. But thank you so much for your recommendations there. Let's move on swiftly. Sorry, Ms. Ebu, your network was tripping, but I mean, you did share quite a number of points. Let's come to Mr. Megari, right? And now the role of technology, right? What role has technology played, right? You know, in Nigerian agriculture previously, and what new technologies do you think, you know, can, you know, be used and adopted to reduce production costs, improve yields, as well as the use of digital platforms? How can we incorporate technology, digital, to ease things up when it comes to production and improving yield?
Well, thank you. This is a handful to handle at this very short time, but let me try. I think I totally agree with what all the previous speakers have mentioned. All the solutions align, but if you remember, I started by saying I would personally prefer to do a thorough interrogation and a deep dive to find the most fundamental pain points. And working from the technology perspective, our company engaged in a series of research in partnership with the World Economic Forum and the Villas Institute to really deep dive into what are the root causes, what are the fundamental problems that not just Nigeria. I mean, Africa has 65% of the total arable land, uncultivated arable land of the whole world is in Africa. But as of present, we import over $100 billion worth of food. If I may quote our very own Kinwumi Adesina of the African Development Bank, he said this is very irresponsible and really, really not sustainable. And so we as a technology company, we wanted to find out what are the reasons behind. If you Google out, why is Africa hungry? Why is Nigeria going through food crisis? I bet you will get almost all the things that we mentioned, you see them there. But if there was security in Nigeria, if there was no COVID, if there was no recurring crisis, if there is no any environmental issue, would the typical maize farmer in, let's say, Lere in Kaduna State, will he be able to produce 14 tons per hectare as his counterpart is doing in Zimbabwe? No. The typical maize farmer in some parts of northern Nigeria, at best, is for you to get 3 tons per hectare. So by doing a deep dive, you realize that our major problem, with all due respect to all the speakers, our major problem has to do with the underproductivity. That is the biggest element, because if you notice, all the discussion about the solutions gets towards improving productivity. Let there be more food. So the underproductivity of the smallholder farmer is our biggest element. And mind you, I stated earlier that 80% of the food we consume comes from this particular constituency, the smallholder farmer. So what is responsible for the underproductivity of the smallholder farmer? If you say insecurity, if you say climate change, if you say COVID, all these are externalities. There are good reasons, there are genuine reasons, lack of involvement of youth. If you bring youth into agri now, would they be able to do 10 tons per hectare? No. So the problems, after doing a deep research, technologically wise, going through patterns, we realize that there are 7 fundamental touch points. If you want to solve the problem of underproductivity in our food system, address these 7 points, and I bet you can put any other thing on top. Number 1 is access to land preparation equipment. I'm happy that most of the speakers mentioned this. Over 80% of our smallholder farmers prepare their land manually. When you prepare land manually, it means you are using human power, human labor to prepare land. It limits your capacity. It limits the quantity. It limits the size of what you are going to do. And when you compare the person that prepares land mechanically with the one that prepares land manually, in land preparation alone, there's a possibility of you increasing your yield by 50%. The person that prepares land mechanically increases his yield by 50%. He saves more, he uses less water, he uses less seeds. These are experts, they all know. Number 2, almost 90% of our farmers plant grains, not seeds. And I'm happy that Ms. Ebu talked about grains and the complication and the confusion between GMOs and certified seeds, locally produced certified seeds. Most of our farmers plant grains. If you understand the science of seed production, what our farmers plant are grains. And when you plant grains, of course, your yield drops. I'm rushing this. Number 3, over 72% of the chemicals in the market are substandard, are fake. When you give a farmer, and for people that don't understand the relationship between chemicals, high quality chemicals, and crops, it's like getting a woman pregnant and she doesn't get fed on nourishing supplements to help the baby. When you plant your crop, there are weeds that are complementary and there are some that are destructive. When the farmers do not have good chemicals to kill off those weeds, these weeds compete for nutrients with the crop. So it's like you sitting down at one amala joint, ordering your plate of amala and gigiri, just for you alone to eat, and then 10 of your friends descend on that same plate. You're not going to belly full, that kind of thing. It's the same thing that happens with our farmers. They plant and they don't have, and so I'm happy that Olubode mentioned about drones, using drones to spray chemicals and stuff like that. They don't even have good chemicals to kill those weeds. And there are weeds that are complementary, meaning weeds like in rice farming, the azolla weed and the seaweed are complementary to your rice crop. Most of our farmers don't know this. Number 4, having access to soil-specific and crop-specific fertilization. I'm so excited that Ms. Ebu is a registered soil scientist. There's a relationship between the soil you are planting a crop Most of the time, our government agencies, our palliatives, we just use one size fits all. Your NPK 2010 is the one that you use from Maiduguri to Calabar. The soil in the northeast has a lot of potassium. So when you are taking the blend of fertilizer to that side, it should have less of potassium. Same way, the soil in the northwest has more of phosphate. Most of our farmers don't know this, and our policymakers don't care. So when you do soil-specific and crop-specific fertilization, of course, it improves your fertilization. Number 5, access to best agronomic practices. These are smallholder farmers that have been farming using 1,000 years old technology from their from their parents. Nobody goes in there. Someone talked about the farm extension agents of yesteryears. Where are they now? These farmers are left on their own to use their own skills. Number 6, mechanized harvesting. Our organization does mechanized harvesting in almost 3 countries in Africa. And I can tell you for sure, if I give you just for the sake of this discussion for context, 1 acre of a rice farm takes 30 people to harvest, using what Bode said, knife, sickle, to harvest in 24 hours. 1 acre takes 30 people to harvest in 24 hours. A small combined harvester does that in 30 minutes. In the last 3 years, between Nigeria and Tanzania, we've harvested over 5,800 hectares of farmlands, rice farms, and we've saved almost 16 million kilograms of grains. Just a small company doing this in small parts of Africa. So what if the government looks at this? Mechanized harvesting is one major issue that's killing our productivity. And of course, the last one is access to market. Most of our farmers are subsistence farmers. They produce without data. If this year maize is doing very well, everybody will go into maize. Like we all know, there will be glut like my sister mentioned, demand and supply. There will be so much supply of maize in the market, the price will crash. The upper year, they will rush to soya, and the same pattern happens. So these are issues that we need to look at. Lastly, before I round up my talk, the government needs to look at the recovering, refurbishing, and reorganization of irrigable lands areas. Because this is a country that relies on one single cycle. Rain-fed season, that is majorly what we do in terms of our production. There are countries that are doing 4 cycles in a year. We need to at least go to triple cycle farming instead of rain-fed. Nigeria has 3.1 million hectares of potentially irrigable land. Do you know how many of those hectares are actually irrigated now? 3.1 million, that's our potential. Currently, we have a little bit above 70,000 hectares. You cannot even be serious when you're doing something like this. So these are things that governments should look at. Let's recover our irrigable lands, really refurbish these lands, and add it to all what the experts have said, engaging the youth, in bringing mechanization, and really solve the problem of underproductivity. To crown it up, you said technology. Technology is an enabler. Technology is not going to make food on the table. You are not going to sit down and be developing an app like some people do, sit down in Banana Island and be lying that 5 million people have downloaded the app. That is not going to work. Technology is supposed to make agriculture very attractive to the younger generation, and it will attract more of them into agriculture because they are digital natives. Some of them are digital, what we call digital natives. It has to go beyond building of apps or basically using drones. We need to invest more in precision farming, in solar-powered irrigation system, climate-smart agricultural practices, soil management techniques. Like my sister, she's a registered soil scientist. What if you have a technological tool that our farmers can use to ascertain the nutritional value, the nutrients in their soil, and the soil pH of their farms and all these things, and how to detect contaminated and adulterated inputs, especially fertilizer. Most of our fertilizer in our market is substandard, low quality, and most times the quantity is even low. I think I'll pause here for the sake of time and then and listen to other contributors. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Ibrahim Megari, for that. And I really took note of those 7 key policies that needs to be put in place for us to drive some level of improvement in our food security and food production in Nigeria. So talk about fertilization, access to best agronomy practices, mechanized harvesting. And very importantly, I took that access to market, and which pretty much brings me to one of the questions of one of our anonymous attendees, because I want to try to quickly talk about some of the Q&As that we have that have not been responded to. So one of them is saying that, please, what measures are in place to prevent foreigners, so Chinese and other African countries' nationals, and foreign companies from buying food items from the farmers directly in different parts of the country and export them while there is food shortage in the country. So these foreigners' practices increase the prices of food items in Nigeria, and Nigerians can get food items to buy at affordable prices. So what this person is alluding here, or I'm suggesting, is that Nigerian farmers, rather than sell to the Nigerian market, would prefer to export their produce abroad, and while we're still going through some level of harsh food insecurity. What's your thought around it, Ibrahim?
Well, this is a double-edged sword. You should know that agri is a business enterprise. So if you say you're going to run I mean, I have operations in some East African countries. I won't name the country. There's a country that I have operations in that came up with a system like this, banning foreigners from buying foodstuff from the market. But it's not practicable, because as a farmer, I mean, the whole essence of going to the farm is to sell. So if you're selling that, I have to now control who I sell to, there's going to be some issues there. So the point is, let's produce. When we produce more, when you produce more, it is even encouraged for you to export, because you earn FX. If I export cashew, if I export sesame seed, and we have to be very, very selective. There are crops that are meant for the export market, like coffee, tea, sesame seed. These are not crops that are fundamental, or they're central to our food security equation, like maize, rice, whatever. If you're talking about rice and maize, nobody even produces, we don't even produce rice to the capacity of even exporting. So nobody is buying rice from Nigeria to take anywhere. The market is enough. In Nigeria, wheat, our local consumption of wheat is over 6-point-something million metric tons. How many tons do we produce in a year? Last year, we did just 102 metric tons, 102,000 metric tons, against 6-point-something million metric tons. So when you don't produce wheat, who's going to export wheat from Nigeria? Nobody exports wheat from Nigeria. So let's concentrate on our core competence, improve our capacity to feed ourselves. And when we do that, I mean, all these issues of barring foreigners will not come to Nigeria and buy rice. I have never seen a foreigner coming to Nigeria to buy rice or to buy maize, because we don't even have enough to feed ourselves. But when you're talking about crops that are export-oriented, like sesame seed, like maybe tea or coffee, these are issues. You can't tell that tea farmer on top of Mambila that some Chinese came in to buy his tea, and you're saying that he has to sell his tea in Nigeria. So we need to be very careful with policies like that. That's my honest opinion, since we are running a free market economic system. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Ibrahim. And just to also support that, so if you look at our foreign trade data released by the MBS for Q1 2024, Nigeria exported cocoa specifically worth about 370 billion in that period, and then sesame seed of about 247 billion. And then when you look at some of the the food items, agricultural produce that were exported during this period, you see the likes of cocoa, sesame seed, you see the like of soya beans, cashew nuts, and flowers. And as I've said, of course, we won't find the likes of rice and beans there. Just to move a little bit from there, again, we have another question from another anonymous attendee, and I'll be directing this to Dr. Adetoyi. This is pretty much a thought process, but I think maybe you could just shed some light there. And the person is saying that he or she is concerned about the palm oil makers in Nigeria. So the biggest, Presco and Okomo. According to him or her, they made a combined profit of 39.2 billion, the highest in 10 years, according to their 2023 audited result. And he believes that Naira devaluation boosted their sales because most of their products are exported, regardless of economic crisis. He said, can you please shed some more light on this? Although I think the light would be in their financials, but I don't know. Doctor, can you give your thoughts here?
Thank you, Mr. Samuel. Just like Mr. Ibrahim Maigeri said, farming is a business. That's why we call it an agri-business now. You run in as if you are also running oil and gas. So Okomu palm or any other palm estate, they are there to make a profit. And lo and behold, whenever there's a devaluation, it increases the value of the export. So most of their customers, they export this palm oil to them. So they make more money. And that is why I saw somebody say they should not give land to maybe foreigner. I say, let them invest, because when you get to Okomu, they take a lot of our people in employment and co. Also owned by Nigeria. How many foreigners are really there? So the valuation used to promote when you export and you devalue, you make more money now, because when you sell the produce and you convert it, you convert the forex to naira, you make more money. So I don't see anything wrong for them to make more money. In fact, the more they declare more profit, the more they are expanding. Because if you see Okom today, or there's another one in Benin, when you are going to worry, I didn't remember now. But when you get there, that is how you see things in a
Yeah, I don't know. Is it the same thing across other places? But I think the video is frozen.
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay. Dr. Aditoyi, we can't hear you for now, but I think you made mention of the fact that, of course, it's not rocket science. It's only expected that when devaluation happens, profitability would go up as a result of their export earnings. And then you also spoke about how that also has positive impacts on their business and expansion. And I think it has really been an interesting conversation across board. Thanks very much to our esteemed panelists. I will give the floor now to Yuade to please give the closing remarks as we draw the curtain. Yuade, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Samuel. First and foremost, I need to thank all our distinguished panelists. Your insights today, I've just been writing. And I thought I knew anything about agric when I was doing my presentation. But obviously, I'm a primary school agric student. But today I've moved from secondary and I'm preparing to enter University of Agric now with all the discussion points. And I'm really, really glad that we have all of you on this panel. A few things that came to me during the session, and I will just quickly highlight them. You spoke about land provisioning, tenure, usage, whether it's commercial, whether it's agri, which for me is something that has to talk about the Land Use Act. We need to revisit the Land Use Act. If those who are close to the National Assembly are listening, this is something that we need to revise and review so that we can better make use of the land. If we have 65% of land in Nigeria that is arable and is not being used, when you hear the data or the information from Mr. Megairi, then we're not doing so much. I hear so many things about local, and when I say local, I'm not saying local in the sense of local, but national research improvement. I have so many research institutes. Can't be talking about soils. Ms. Ebu has spoken so much about it. Dr. Labode has spoken so much about it. Mr. Megari has spoken about it. Otumba has spoken so much about it. We can't be talking about soil if we're not doing enough research in terms of the things that we would use to improve agricultural produce. You spoke about fertilizer. You spoke about even there's a need for us to even understand how we can use movement of cross soils to improve soil technology across the country. And these are things that research institutes and the federal government and the state government should start looking into and putting their might and their voice behind, and the financing behind. We talk about looking for financing for agriculture. We can't get it because listening today, like I said, I'm just a primary school student and I've been in finance for so long, and I don't understand some of these little nitty-gritties towards ensuring that we can fund agriculture. You know, we talked about youth through technology. I think it was Prince Olabode that spoke about that. Yeah, we can't just throw the youth into technology. And like Mr. Megari asserted to, we have to make sure that we are developing them in the right knowledge and what kind of technology we're even talking about before we go into mechanized farming. Another thing that came up was shared partnership and core competence.
in terms of what we are planting. Like Mr. Megari said, why are we planting maize to feed, or are we planting maize towards putting it into the other aspects of agriculture, into the other raw materials that is going to go into? These are things we need to talk about. And when we are talking about from farm to market to table, these are how we must segment these things towards having all these discussions. Industrialization, mechanization is one thing you also said. And in conclusion for me, I just try to put these things in three categories. Farm, like we said, market, and table. What are we going to look at, and what should we look at? So from farms, we must look at how are we growing, how are we harvesting, how are we selling. This is what I hear from everybody. It's not just saying, and when you talk about competence, we're talking about how are we growing, what are we growing? Is it what, like Mr. Megari said, we're not growing enough wheat, and we consume 6.5 million tons of wheat, and we are producing only 102,000. Meanwhile, we are fighting to produce rice that we cannot produce to the extent of where we can export. So we must work with our core competencies and be able to move agric back to where it used to be, like the rice, the groundnut pyramids, the cocoa from the west, the groundnuts from the north, the palm oil and the rubber from the east and the Midwest, you just name it. And we have all these researches. When Prince was talking about going to Malaysia, and they were talking about palm trees, let's remember that the short palm tree seeds were discovered by NIFO in Nigeria. So let nobody think that we don't have these capacities and these capabilities. But that's, for me, is where government should be focusing. And like Mr. Megari said, agriculture is a business, and let's run it as a business. So when it comes to markets, we must be looking at 4 things, and this is my opinion. Food as finished goods, the ones that we're going to eat, the ones that we're going to put into the supermarkets that people are going to buy, the ones that are going to go into the market that people are going to go to that market and buy. We must also look at it as raw materials for the next process of production. Like you said about wheat, is it raw material? Is it raw material and all? So we must look at all that and then look at table, processed foods, how it comes from the market to the table and feeding everybody. Thank you very much once again. I really appreciate everyone, and have a great rest of the Saturday. Bye-bye and have a great day. Over to you, Joanna.
Oh, okay. Over to me. I actually thought that you're going to tie things together, but thank you so much for that. Pretty much a summary today. Again, this webinar was brought to you by Nairametrics, packaged by Nairametrics. It was amazing having our analysts, provide us insights. A huge thank you. This webinar will be made available. The recording will be made available on YouTube. So don't worry if you missed anything, you were not able to jot anything down. There's a recording you can pause, forward, rewind. That'll be made available on YouTube later on in the week, hopefully latest Tuesday. Again, thank you for making out the time. There's so many things you can do with your Saturday morning, but being here and learning more about agriculture, hopefully we see forward movements in that sector, and hopefully we see food prices come down. Thank you once again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.